Welcome to Chocolate for Breakfast. So this is the second part of the video about motivation and willpower. So let's say whatever you've managed to do to get yourself motivated. So there you are, you're highly motivated, you're going to lose the weight. That's it, I've decided I'm going to lose the weight. Now what you need is a good dose of willpower. Okay. Now, for me, the major problem about willpower, and for me, motivation and willpower go very much hand in hand. For me, the problem with willpower is, in a sense, willpower is what's necessary in order for you to do something that you don't really want to do. For example, I need willpower to do the housework. It's not something I particularly enjoy doing, so I need to use some willpower to actually get that done. I need willpower to get in my car and go to work because I'd actually rather be staying here and finishing my book and, you know, making videos for you guys. So I need willpower for that. The willpower element and here I'm going to talk about my friend that I spoke about in a previous video. She had got to a stage of weight where she was about my size, I would say, maybe a little bit heavier again. So like I said, I weighed 93 kilos, so that's like 186 pounds roughly, somewhere around that. I think she was maybe around between 93 and 100 kilos, and she was doing these low calorie diets. Now, I already knew quite a lot of stuff because I'd already started having a weight problem. I'd already actually started looking into it, and again, because my mother was type 1 diabetes, I also had quite a lot of information at that time. But you know, she was in her thing and doing the low calorie approach to losing weight. And the thing with the low calorie diets, and again I mentioned this in a previous video and I'm going to talk about it again. You start off here, okay? You start doing the low calorie diet, okay? And you lose some weight, so you go down a bit. Now again, as I mentioned, the body then believes, because there's a shortage of food, the body then goes into famine mode. It starts to stock. So what happens is you don't lose any more weight, so you start to stagnate. Because the food amount isn't increased, and a lot of people will actually start lowering the calories again. By this time, what happens is the body, in order to be able to get through the famine period, actually starts to stock. And because that continues, and again perhaps you've reduced the amount of calories, it's going to go back up again. And so we go along, and then we go back down, but we don't go back down to the level that we were before. We stagnate, and we go up, and we go above. We go along, we go down, we stagnate, put the weight back on, and again above. So you've started here, and you're finishing here. And what happened with this friend of mine was the more she put on weight, the less she was eating. She was lowering her calorie intake more and more with the advice of nutritionists, but we will get to that. When I start thinking about the medical profession, I do start to get a little bit annoyed. And in the end, she was eating 600 calories a day, which is about a third of the recommended amount. These tiny portions of food, I mean, I don't know if you can imagine, if you're doing this yourself or if you've done this yourself, to eat that amount of calories, such a small amount of calories, the tiny amounts of food that you can actually have in a day. And she ended up, she weighed something like 130 kilos, 130 to 140 kilos. So we're talking 260 to 280 pounds. And she was eating nothing. And just because I thought this was quite funny, but it also makes a point. I don't know if you've ever seen the film The Full Monty. It's a film about these guys who decide to get together and do a striptease to actually make some money. They're kind of in a desperate situation, so to speak, and they just, you know, very creatively decide to do this this thing, and it works out really well in the end. It's a very good film, very funny film. One of the scenes in this film, they get together in somebody's house. And the idea is that they take their clothes off in front of each other because, you know, they have to get used to the idea of taking their clothes off because, you know, they're going to be doing this in front of, I don't know how many hundred people. So, you know, it's like, if, you know, the idea was if we can't do it in front of ourselves, we're not going to have a chance of doing it in front of anybody else. And one of the guys is actually quite overweight. One of the male characters is quite overweight in this film. And you see him very timidly taking off his t-shirt and, you know, and covering up his stomach, and then, you know, saying to the others, don't look at me, you know, kind of thing. And then it's actually quite funny because it reminds me of a lot of conversations that I've heard amongst women, you know, where they're saying, oh, you know, you should try this, that. And, you know, I know this woman who went to a health farm and they put this stuff around her. It was a bit like cling film. I can't remember what it was called, but she lost stones. It was amazing. And I mean, I've heard this kind of thing. It was really funny to actually have this scene where men were talking about this, because you don't think that men are so particularly concerned with the weight problem, which couldn't be more false. When men are just as concerned about their weight as women are. And the guy says at one point, you know, the less I eat, the fatter I get. And one of the guys replies to him, well, in that case, you know, stuff yourself and get thin. And it is kind of, well, I'm not saying to you to stuff yourself, okay? But it is actually kind of making the point of we need to eat sufficiently, because if we don't eat sufficiently, we actually do put on more weight because the body will react. You know, we've got an instinct that is there for millions of years. The body is programmed to do that, and it will do that. And maybe with evolution, in another couple of million years, if we're still here, if we haven't destroyed ourselves before then, maybe our bodies won't have this kind of reaction. Who knows? Evolution is a very long and slow process. So to come back to my friend, she was eating such small amounts of food and desperately miserable. But I have to say, I was admirative and full of respect for her willpower, because it took an enormous amount of willpower. I mean, what a strong character this woman has to be able to put herself through that. And like I say, she was miserable. It was a horrible experience for her. And the solution that she found, and again, this makes me so angry, the medical profession are very often, they content themselves to treat to treat the symptom and not the cause. She decided to go ahead and have an operation which is called a bypass, which basically they took away her stomach. It's a very heavy operation, and yes, okay, she did lose weight, but at what price? The price she's paying for that now. I remember the last time I saw her was quite a few years ago. She stayed with me for a week, and my daughter was about 2 or 3 years old. She was eating the same amount of food as my daughter. A grown woman eating the same amount of food as a baby, because in actual fact she couldn't eat any more than that because her stomach wasn't there. And clearly she wasn't getting all the nutriments necessary, the nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals. She wasn't getting those things necessary to keep her alive through the way she was eating. And the stomach is so necessary for the digestion and for the distribution of those nutriments that are in the food. To not have a stomach anymore, I mean, I remember when she told me she was going to do this operation, I just burst into tears, and I was like begging her not to do it. And I was saying, you know, I can help you. And she didn't want to go down this road. And again, I have to respect her choice, okay? But to compensate the fact that she didn't have enough nutriments, well, basically, she lives on vitamin pills. And she also has to take pills to help with the digestion, because this kind of operation also creates an enormous amount of problems with the digestion. But yes, this was a case of willpower for me. But the willpower was not sufficient for her to actually carry on doing it herself. She ended up having or deciding to have an operation which actually obliged her to do it. And I can tell you very honestly that this woman has absolutely no enjoyment when it comes to food. None at all. And I think that's a real shame. So for me, yeah, the willpower thing, and I'm going to talk about myself. When I was trying all these diets and nothing was working, or it would work for a while and it would be difficult to maintain, and then it would stagnate, and then I would start putting weight back on again, and I was miserable as well. And as I said before, you know, food had got to a stage where it was like I didn't feel that I could put anything in my mouth without feeling bad about it, without feeling bad about myself. You know, and why are we going to do that to ourselves? You know, ask yourself, why am I going to do this to myself? And to be perfectly honest, what actually happened with me was I gave up. I gave up trying. I thought, to hell with this. I want to enjoy my food. I like food. Now, again, I have a lot of knowledge about nutrition and about how to eat. And basically what I did was I gave up and I just started eating according to those rules, not with a weight loss goal in mind in actual fact, but with the idea of, well, I know what certain foods are doing to my body. I know that if I eat such and such a food, it's going to produce too much insulin and I'm not going to feel well afterwards, and you know, I'm risking cancer, I'm risking heart disease, I'm risking too much cholesterol, or the bad cholesterol. So I thought, well, okay, I'm just gonna do this. And there was no weight loss sorry, that's the French word, goal in mind. I had given up, but I was enjoying my food, and I was already implementing the simple rules that I still implement today. And miraculously, the weight started falling off. And it was a very strange thing, because I noticed it first of all, and I wasn't expecting it. I noticed it first of all on my face, and then I noticed it around my chest area, because you know, obviously if you're very big, you have bigger clothes. When I was doing my bra up, it was too loose around my top part here, and you know, and as a woman, you know, your breasts do tend to fall a little bit when you lose weight. So you know, this was the first thing I noticed, was the top half of my body was actually starting to lose weight, and then it continued its way down, and the rest lost weight as well. And you know, it's a very strange thing when that happens to you, you know, and you suddenly realize the weight is just going away by itself, and I'm not actually doing anything. I'm not making any effort at all, and I'm eating to my heart's content. And this is really what I want, the place that I would like to bring you to, the place of being able to eat to your heart's content, and not feel that you're having to make an effort, and not feel that food is something that's become unpleasant to you. And again, the medical profession really don't help us in that way. I just want to talk about one thing, and it's to do with the kind of motivation, because I did actually mean to mention it in the first video, but I actually kind of forgot. I was remembering, in fact, a woman that I knew before, and she'd had several children, and when she had her last child, she wasn't fat at all. I mean, she wasn't overweight at all, but she was nicely rounded, you know, if I mean, I imagine her husband, you know, probably really appreciated the way she was at that time. But again, because of the image that we have to be thin, we have to be such and such. In France, it's a country of stick insects. It's less and less true because the French are changing their eating habits, and there is actually starting to be quite a bit of a weight problem and an obesity problem here in France. I'm not sure if I already mentioned that in the first part of the video. So she decided, well, she didn't really use any willpower. Again, she has a way of eating that works for her. So she went to that way of eating. And I remember, so I'd, you know, I'd seen her, you know, she, you know, maybe 6 to 9 months after she'd had the baby, she was still quite, you know, I don't like to use the word fleshy, but you know, she wasn't fat at all. One wasn't hanging out over or whatever. It was just nice. She looked like for me, she looked like a woman. And she decided to lose the weight. And I remember once she was standing with her back to me, and I saw her shoulder blades, and her shoulder blades were sticking out through her skin. And yeah, okay, I mean, she's quite well off. She's able to buy all the nice designer clothes, or what we consider nice designer clothes. And the clothes, you know, fit her very well because, you know, they are made for people who are stick insects, basically. And but for me, it was like, I looked at that and I felt a certain sense of, like, it sounds horrible, but I felt a certain sense of disgust, in the sense that she was way too thin. And the trouble for her was, she decided at one point to have a breast implant because she didn't have any breasts left. And I'm sorry, if you're a woman, you're supposed to have breasts. I know there are some very flat-chested, we all have different sizes. I'm not particularly big, sorry. If I go red right now, you know why. We do have different sizes of breasts. Not everybody has large bosoms. But she had lost, through losing the weight, her chest had become completely flat. And so she went and got a breast implant. And I think, well, you know, I would rather you'd have stayed at the weight you were, which I thought was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And you had a beautiful bosom, you know. For me, there was nothing wrong with that. So again, the motivation of, she thought that she wasn't allowed to stay like that. But she was perfectly healthy being like that. So why change? She changed because the image that we think we're supposed to project wasn't right for her. So please check out your motivations. Do you really want to lose weight, and why? Think about it. And you can get back to me, Facebook group, Facebook page, Google+, Twitter, and my email will be underneath the video. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate. And you can also subscribe. I learned this recently. I'm fairly new to YouTube, but apparently you can also subscribe to the channel. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, that would make me quite happy. So please do that as well. And I'll be speaking to you soon. I hope this has been helpful, and here's to your very good health. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.